Today's show is a motor racing special. So the 5 lights have just gone out and it's go, go, go!
Welcome to the Car Deal Advisor Podcast Show. The presenter of this show is Hugh Hetrick. Get ready for special motoring legends and great deals on your next set of wheels. So the 5 red lights have just gone out and it's go, go, go.
Good morning and welcome to the Car Deal Advisor Podcast Show with me, Hugh Hetrick, and my very special guest, Douglas Niven. Well, Douglas, it's lovely to have you on the show. Thanks very much for coming. How are you today?
I'm great, Hugh, and it's good to catch up with you again. It's a few years since I've seen you.
Aye.
We go back a long time. I used to, well, your father was my doctor at the time, and I used to play squash to keep fit with him and everything else, and we used to have a great time together.
We certainly did. And I remember kind of hearing about all your racing stories that my father would tell me about as you did touring cars and things like that. And so on the show today, we'll get into all of that. And of course, you're the late cousin of Jim Clark. So there's lots of very interesting things we can talk about with that as well. But we'll get started straight into the show. I suppose that most people will know you as you're an accomplished racing driver in your own right. But what was the thing that kind of inspired you to get into motor racing? Was it being a cousin of Jim Clark, or was it just in the blood?
Yeah, just to put it into perspective, Jim was actually 10 years older than me, exactly 10 years older than me, and of course, and as we know, unfortunately, he was killed when he was 32 years old. So therefore, I was 22 at that time. But Jim had been racing for 10 years before that or so, and I was at school up at Strathallan in Perthshire, and I used to get the papers, on a Monday morning to see how Jim had done in the Natal Grand Prix in South Africa, the Pau Grand Prix in France, and all these different things. And it was also a fight to get to the paper to find out how he did. So I think that sort of set me away on that route of getting, being interested in motorsport. And the racing, and that's what I suppose sowed the seed for that.
Yeah. And did you ever ask him for tips and things like that, or kind of strategies, or talk about racing with him when you saw him? And that
He actually didn't like to talk about racing much at all when he was at home. And of course, as I said, I was at school until I was sort of 17, and Jim was at that point was away, abroad, so we didn't see so much of him at that time. And when he did come home, he really wanted to find out more about what was happening with all the farms and everything else and that type of thing. And he would talk about it. But again, I wasn't actually racing at that time. Because it was only after Jim was killed that I went into motor racing. Right. And I think it was something I had to get out of my system because it was there and it needed to come out. Because I think it was the fact that, the pent up energy was... Yeah,
absolutely.
And I didn't get any support from the family, which is exactly what happened to Jim. His mother and father didn't like Jim racing. He didn't approve of it. And neither did, my mother was alive, my father wasn't, but my mother never approved of it. Only ever came to one race, and that was, I think, the last one, because she was more or less mated by the family, just to at least see what I was doing.
And happy that that was your last one, isn't it? So I suppose it's one of those things that, and of course, I mean, in the incredible history of Jim Clark, I mean, I've seen some of the old videos on YouTube when they had the bus that went through Churnside and Duns when he got his World Championship. I mean, that must have been a fantastic thing to experience.
Yeah, I mean, my first memory of Jim would be 1959. It was a Boxing Day Brands Hatch. It was on television, and that was Jim and the Lotus Elite up against Colin Chapman.
All right.
And unfortunately, a backmarker got in the way of Jim, and Colin slipped through and won the race. But from that point, that's when Colin Chapman noticed that Jim was a talent to be looked at. And of course, Ian Scott Watson started the ball rolling earlier than that. When he went to Crimond up in Aberdeenshire to race, and Jim came along as a mechanic. Jim became friendly with Ian through the Young Farmers Club and the Brighton District Motor Club at that time. And if you remember one, you remember the other, basically. And so Jim went up there. And then Ian Scott Watson said to Jim, "Why didn't you ever go?" And see how you get on. So we did that, and he was 3 seconds a lap quicker than Ian straight away.
Yeah.
So Ian said, "Look, I'm wasting my time. You should have a go." What they didn't realise was that a lot of Jim's relations are from the north. And of course, Jim and his parents came down from Fife, like my parents did.
Yeah,
And therefore, unknown to Jim, there was relations in the crowd watching this race.
Right.
And that got back down to his mother and father, who had told him he wasn't allowed to race or do anything else. And he was racing basically as an A&R. And so
the game was up.
The game was up basically at that stage. So from then on to but his mother would never go to a race, wouldn't talk about it, and just but his father was justifiably proud. But
I think because it was so dangerous, wasn't it?
It was at that time.
Yeah, and you come through a kind of post-war era where people had lost so many relations and different things and been so affected, and then to do a sport which is so dangerous, you can understand why people thought it was very risky and wouldn't be supportive. I remember my father going to Charter Hall, and that would have been in the 50s and very early 60s, and he said it was great racing, great fun to watch, but there were some quite serious accidents there as well and that. But I mean, I suppose motorsport is just one of those things where you take such a risk, but the rewards are so huge as well when it all works out. Yeah. But I mean, it's when you look at the old programs of like on old racing cars, and I'm sure you'd have had that in your early racing career as well. I mean, it was so much more. It was more raw. It wasn't, nowadays it's paddle shift gearboxes and kind of lots of safety tech and things like that. Well, you just didn't have that in those days, isn't it? It was
there were more sort of ordinary going cars with gear, and natural gearbox selection, and none of the technology and computer science that there is today. At Charter Hall, well, the last race meeting there was 1963, which is when I drove my car too, because I'd got my license earlier that year, so I was 17, and but there, they raced around oil drums and bales and things, and if you went off, you went through a fence into a field, and that was what happened. Unfortunately, there was fatalities there as well, but that's where Jim and Jackie Stewart and a lot of other people cut their teeth in the early days, and that's and it's from there, because that's when the Border Reivers was formed by the late Jock McBain. Churnside, of course, that was just next door to Eddington Mains, where Jim farmed, and of course they bought the Aston Martins, Jaguar D-types and all these sort of cars, DBR ones, Aston Martin, and the raced from there, and that's what set him off,
isn't it?
Was.
Because I'd heard that, I mean, one of my previous guests had said that, that people like Jack Brabham as well had come to Charter Hall to race, and there'd been quite a lot of the early days, kind of very much famous racing drivers in Formula One had come to drive there. I think Mike Hawthorne as well, I think, had raced there. So it's
well, I know I was taken to, well, even before Charter Hall, if you go back to Winfield.
That's right, because they did Winfield before,
because Prince Bira and the Works BRMs and Stirling Moss and these guys all came up to Winfield to race, and that's supposedly where the only Scottish Grand Prix ever took place.
All right, wow.
But I was 4 years old when I was there at the meeting, and I was told, I've been told I was taken home because I couldn't stand the noise of my car. But at that time there was BRMs and
they're pretty loud.
Noisy
that's the thing,
but
isn't it?
I could hear the racing from home. It's only 3 miles from.
Of course, from
Winfield. So again, so that's my father and some of the local farmers were the clerks of the course, and everybody got involved because it was the Winfield Joint Committee at that stage, which then was transferred to Charter Hall afterwards. Again, both old wartime airfields.
Yeah, and I suppose it'd be in quite good condition at that point, because now I've been to Charter Hall last year. I went to Charter Hall just to have a look round because I hadn't been there for years, and I think they've redone the airstrip. In all fairness, they've re-tarmacked a bit of it, but we just wanted to see where the old track was and just where what it was like, and even with it being quiet, it just had an amazing atmosphere. It was still you could just imagine what it must have been like to try and race round, But because it was quite a short circuit, wasn't it? It was only about 2 miles long.
I never raced there, but I drove around it not so long ago with some journalists, took them around. It's quite bumpy now. But the actual grid is still there. You can still see the numbers of the grid.
I was going to try and find that. Because
and that is at the end of the bit of tarmac you're talking about. That tarmac was laid because Leyland or Land Rover launched a new Range Rover there, and that's where the journalists. So
they wanted to have something that
they could drive up and down. What they did was up to 100 miles an hour and then brake. See how long it took about 10 seconds.
All right.
But so they laid the old main straight.
Because the main straight still was a mile long,
Yeah,
which was really, I mean, it doesn't look it when you see it from the pictures, but actually when you get there, it's quite
You
impressive.
think of all these old cars with the drum brakes and things like that and whatever, stuff at the end of that.
Trying to do that.
Yeah.
Just well, it was wide and it was
right.
fields,
Exactly.
isn't it? That was the thing.
Yes.
But no, it's. What do you think? What's been your if you could think about a race, first of all, with that you watched that was maybe one of your ones that you think was most memorable? What would have been? Yeah.
Well, I think maybe there's been one or two that have been memorable, but the one that physically saw where he was really working hard was at the 1964 Grand Prix at Brands Hatch.
All right.
And that was the European Grand Prix, and he had an engine problem at low oil pressure, and he had to sort of really nurse the engine all the way. So round the corners, he would switch the engine off to save the oil surge because the pressure was very low, and then he would accelerate down the straights.
Yeah.
And he beat Graham Hill but a lot of drivers would just get plugging on until the engine blew up. But he managed to nurse his car home and get it home.
So I suppose that's the thing. He must have been obviously very fit as well to be able to drive these kind of cars and to do all these Grand Prix. But they always said that the ones that were the fittest, they could kind of see above the normal problems, wasn't it? They could not only just race, but they could have a strategy like being able to turn your engine off at corners where nobody else would, and be able to manage it and as a result win races, isn't it? That's what they.
He certainly, because Lotus didn't build a strong car, Colin Chapman, the founder of Lotus, built the cars really lightweight, and that, and he was a great engineer and designer, but the car, if it had a fault, it wasn't very strong. Yeah. And a lot of suspensions would break and one thing and another, that type of thing would happen. But and in fact, he could have won 4 world championships if it hadn't been for an oil leak in the diff in the last race and this sort of thing. But but Lotus certainly and Colin Chapman worked together very well.
It's an amazing partnership. I mean, even up until the late 80s, when Colin Chapman died, wasn't it? I mean, his team was still exceptional. I mean, they saw Ayrton Senna and look how well he did for Lotus and all of that, and it was, and then of course Nigel Mansell as well raced for Lotus, wasn't it? Too.
Yes, Jochen Rindt, quite a lot of them, really
incredible talent.
Mario Andretti,
people
like that, and they all did well.
Aye, it was a pity because I mean, up until a few years ago, when Lotus had current Formula One, didn't they? And then they sadly went bust, and then Renault bought them over. But I think they were using a Renault engine, but derived as Lotus. But
if you fast forward to the present day, a company called Geely from China, a Chinese company, have bought Lotus now. And they are certainly putting some, I believe, funds and finance into it, and will keep the name alive.
The name going, because that name is just so important, really, isn't it? And I mean, obviously they're still making the Elise and things like that, aren't they, and other cars? They've still got a range of cars available. In fact, I'll be speaking about a very, very exciting competition in a few minutes' time, where the potential you could win Lotus Evora GT4110 Sport, and the money raised goes to the Jim Clark Museum, which is currently being renovated and is due to be opened in the spring next year. I think it is. That's what they're hoping.
Well, we're thinking we call it a soft opening maybe in the spring, depending on how the builders and all the works go, and then there'll be an official opening later in the year to coincide with a time when whoever comes to open it. It might be John Todd, president of the FIA, or Jackie Stewart, who's our own president, or a name like that will come. And at that time, they will do the raffle for the Lotus Evora that we are selling tickets for. Yeah. They launched this at Goodwood at the Festival of Speed recently, and the tickets have gone very well since then. And we were up at Knockhill at the British Touring Car Championship last weekend. Sold a lot of tickets again. And the idea is that this car is to replicate what was the Elan that Jim had, an ex-Scott Watson car, 997 NUR as it's known, and that was chassis number 1. This one is chassis number 100,000. Lotus chassis to be built, and it's worth £100,000. So for £20 ticket,
it's definitely good value. Worth it. Now, of course, you can apply for entry at the Jim Clark Trust website, which is www.jimclarktrust.com. I think that was on what we have here. So yes, you can do that, or if you want to get in touch with us here, just send us an email at podcast@cardealadvisor.co.uk, and we'll happily send an application form out to you. So we'll get back to the show and back to our interview with Douglas Niven. So, Douglas, you've obviously got an accomplished racing driver yourself, and well known at Ingleson. In fact, I remember about 3 years ago going to the Ingleson Revival and seeing you driving a milk float, racing around the circuit, having lots of fun doing that. But you've got quite a lot of records in motor racing. You were saying you...
Well, we started in 1969 with the Ford Anglia for a year, and then I bought the ex-Graham Birrell Wileys of Glasgow twin cam Escort, which is well sorted, and we won the Scottish Championship in 1970 with that.
Yeah.
And then we went on to do other saloons racing at Mallory Park, Coulton Park, Brands Hatch, Silverstone, whatever.
Yeah.
And with various different Escorts and cars, I always tended to buy somebody else's cast off. You know, they would build it or buy new, get it all well prepared, sorted, and like everybody else, you think you're going to do something better the following year. So I'd buy their car. And by the time they got their car sorted out, we'd won again. And that's what actually happened with Graham Birrell in 1970 and Wiley's, and there was Jenny Birrell as well racing, Bill Dryden for SMT, Vauxhall, Forenza, and then we progressed and then to super saloons, which was the bigger the engine, the most hairy, noisy.
The kind of V8 engines as well.
V8 engines, So I had a 5.7 litre Escort and a Capri, and then latterly
5 litre Escort.
Latterly we had a Volkswagen Beetle. Now the rules and regulations were that the engine and gearbox had to be in the same half as the production car. So therefore, obviously, a Beetle with an engine in the back. So what we did was got a Formula 5000 engine, which it was built by Mick Hill. Again, same story. A cast off from Mick. He went on to build a Skoda, which he thought would be better than that, and I bought his Beetle. The Beetle was a Trojan 101 Formula 5000 car, single seater, and with just 4 pins and just dropped his fiberglass shell on the top. And it did resemble a Beetle.
It looks amazing.
But,
it does.
I think the windscreen and the badge on the front, but the only things that with the door handles. Yeah. But everything else was just a Formula 1 car, a Formula 5000 car, and you could put it back to being a single seater at any time you wanted. Yeah. And that car, was a great success. At one point we had 8 lap records out of 13 circuits that we had, and in the last race, the full season we had 28 wins out of 43 starts, and the rest were either breakdowns or places. And we won the saloon car championship for Britain that year. But the only other person that had more wins was Kenny Atchison in the Formula 3. He's an Irishman. He'd one more win than I had. So, but it was a great fun doing that.
So, like the super saloons, was that like a kind of early style kind of British touring car type thing?
It was really, yeah. There was a Brian Muir and the Wigan Steep Camaro, Yogi Muir. There was Frank Gardner. There was Jerry Marshall, and lots of big engines. 8 litre engines. The bigger the better.
Because he used to draw in the crowds. That was the thing, wasn't it?
They were great fun to be involved with. And thoroughly enjoyed that. And then, of course, like everything else, it moves on. And now some of them have been resurrected. That Beetle is still around. And in fact, I've driven it recently. I've launched a chap called Dave Taylor down in Lancashire, and he resurrected that car and rebuilt it. And I've driven it at Knockhill and Donington, Mallory Park, and Goodwood up the hill at the Festival of Speed, as I did this year, the Festival of Speed with Jim Clark's Works Lotus Katina,
which is fantastic,
which is great fun to do, and really interesting to see how the cars of these years compared to today.
I mean, like, what is Jim Clark's car like? Especially like the Lotus, the Formula 1 car. Is it really difficult to drive? Is it quite tricky? Because obviously Goodwood you can't drive it that fast because it's quite a thin, narrow road. Is it? I mean, are the gears quite? It's obviously the gears are. It's the old style racing gearbox and things like that.
Well, it was a Lotus Katina that was driving. The Works Lotus Katina.
The Works Lotus Katina.
That I was driving, but that car has been owned by the current owner since 1975, and they've obviously maintained it mechanically, but internally it's the same steering wheel, same seats, everything else as Jim raced it in, and the same seat belts. So it was nice to get into the car and have something with Jim's DNA on it,
absolutely.
And drive this car up the hill. And maybe he would have 140, 160 horsepower in that car, which was quite a lot.
And it's been light as well, so
light.
It's going to...
and it's handled fine, but as you say, up to the hill at Goodwood, you've only got about a minute in the car. It's all a bit noisy and whatever. And
keep it out of the hay bales and things like that.
Especially when you've got a few 100,000 people watching, you don't want to get it wrong,
I mean, I have once driven up there, but only I was there on one of the moving motor show, and I was running an Infinity hybrid, which was actually really good fun. But of course, they put an extra chicane halfway up to stop people like me getting too much bravado or thinking, yes, I can do this, no problem. But it was great fun, actually. Just being able to drive up that hill climb is exceptional. But I suppose from our listeners' point of view, many of them have maybe never driven a racing car, or they watch it on TV and things like that. What is the main difference between driving, when you were driving those incredible touring cars, compared to like a normal kind of car? What would be the difference? Is everything is obviously stripped out and lighter and faster? But in terms of clutches and are they smooth to drive, or are they knife edge stuff?
Well,
or is it kind of
the Beetle, it was not to 100 in 4 seconds, which is I mean today's time is maybe not so fast, but it was going back 30, 40 years ago, and 3 miles to the gallon.
Wow.
And you'd 5 litres, so you'd about 600-700 horsepower.
Wow.
You'd 17-inch rubber tyres in the back. So therefore, to answer your question about handling, there was that much tyre on the road, you couldn't really do too much wrong unless you're...
Yeah, so there's plenty of grip and everything.
And a traditional gearbox. So it handled well, and it drove as it should do on rails.
I remember I once did a race day at Donington myself, and my family came down to watch me. My father came, and he was very kind of concerned that I did everything properly. And the thing is, I wore the wrong shoes. My shoes were a bit too big to try and get into these cars, but they let me drive a Vauxhall Lotus car, which was the single-seater. I think it was a 2-litre Vauxhall engine at the time, and it was great fun because you could barely see over the front, and that was the first experience of thinking, how do these people actually see where the apex of the corner is, let alone try and drive quickly, but the gears, I found it, because you have to double the clutch and you have to rev it as you change down to try and get the gears properly slick in, and that took a lot. It took a lot of concentration. I wasn't used to it, but I think it must be amazing driving these kind of cars at speed, and obviously racing against 20 other people at the same time.
People think it must be difficult among a big pack of cars, but the thing is, you're actually all going at the same speed, so you're all maybe standing still, because the car's maybe slightly gaining on you, you're gaining on the other one, but you're not going at vast differences of speed. So therefore, it all kind of happens together. The worst time when you're together is if it's a wet day and you can't see a thing, and you're driving in a permanent mist and fog. But if you're together, and you tend to know your drivers and who's doing what.
Yeah, who's good and who isn't.
And to finish first you've got to finish. So if you're going to take somebody out, somebody's going to take you. There's no prizes for that. Yes, you all go home with a bag of bits. But drivers tend in the whole to be pretty fair. Although when you watch the current in the British Touring Car Championship, you do tend to sort of have a bit of nudging.
Yeah, it's quite dodgy in places, isn't it? Yeah.
But half the time their wheels are in the air anyway, so a wee touch and they spin off.
Yes, I know, that's it, isn't it?
But no, generally you drivers and everything else, and in our era, after the event was over, we'd all go away and have a barbecue together or something after that.
So it was a nice atmosphere.
Help each other out,
yeah. I remember watching the touring cars in kind of late 80s, early 90s, when it was like Steve Sofer and John Killand and people like that, and they had some amazing coming togethers, and especially it was in 1992 when they were taking each other off every opportunity. But they were great races to watch, and there were thousands of people turned up to watch them. And of course, at that time, they used to have them along with the Grand Prix, didn't they? They'd have the Grand Prix, and then afterwards you'd have a touring car race. Because I remember watching the European Grand Prix at Donington, and they just saw Senna win, and then the rain came down and started lashing down, and then they had a touring car race right after it, and that was fantastic to watch as well. So I think the touring cars and that kind of era of racing is just amazing, and the fact you've been part of all of that is quite a... Well, we actually
were the support race for the British Grand Prix at Silverstone one year, so that was great fun too. If you had your overalls on, you kind of got to go forever.
Yeah, exactly.
You could go where you like, almost, and even in these days it wasn't nearly the security or strictness that there is today. You could get into the pit lane and see what's going on, and nobody was herding you away. Which obviously now with the crowds and everything else,
they have to
do that for safety. But in these days, well, go back to Ingleson, places like that. There is the stories of me hitting the toilets and going over the toilets and all that sort of thing, and the throttle jammed wide open. But there was trees and things around about and all that sort of thing.
So
these buildings and things. And that's why Ingleson really came to a close, because it was too dangerous.
They could remove the trees and open up a little bit. That would be a great.
And that's the last thing you want to do, is because obviously
I suppose it's
as a showground and a facility for all the other weeks of the year, it don't cause any problems. And that's where Knockhill was designed and built, to be with safety in mind.
Yes, because you've got plenty of space to run off and
Yeah.
things like that, isn't it? No, that's the. I remember I had some very funny memories and fun memories of Ingliston, going up there and seeing the racing. And I was a runner, and they used to, before it was all computerised. They would print off the times, and I had to take the times and run to one of the other boards and stick it up for the drivers to see how they had qualified and things like that. And that was great fun. You had to be so quick because they were desperate to find out,
Yes.
what position they were in. But I also remember the pit lane was so open, and the pits were quite big at that point. The old cattle kind of sheds and things, just next to them, and they'd let you sit in the cars. And I thought, my goodness, nowadays, they never let you anywhere near. But you used to sit in the car, and I'd be about 12 or 13 and sit in these warm kind of racing cars that had already been out once or twice, and they say, yeah, you can sit in there while we're just, talking away and so on. And it was an amazing thing to be able to do.
Very much a relaxed atmosphere,
Yeah,
and that's
yeah.
the way it was meant to be,
Aye,
And that's when they had a round of the British Super Saloon Car Championship. All these drivers came up from the south, and they thought they were in the Shetland Islands or something. They thought that they couldn't believe that we used to go down there every fortnight or whatever and race down in their circuits, down at Snetterton and Brands Hatch. Brands Hatch was about 500 miles away.
It's a long journey.
And because we were in Super Saloons, it always tended to be the last race.
Yeah.
So you're hanging about all day waiting for this, and then all you need to do is get home, and you get home at 3 or 4 o'clock the next morning or something. Because even though we were racing cars, we were still farming.
Yeah,
farming
had work. Yeah.
So we always made a point of being back, on the Monday morning for that.
Yeah.
But it meant a long drive home. But although I didn't have to bring the car home, we were lucky with mechanics who did it for the enjoyment of it. Because I was racing for Border Reivers at that stage, which is the team that Jim Clark raced for, and he Scott Watson asked me to take on the mantle of that.
Yeah.
And that still goes on today with,
because the Border Reivers is still active, isn't it?
Very much so. Cameron Binney took over the helm for a while, and currently Jamie Thorburn from Duns, in Formula Ford is having success with that now, and carrying the mantle very well, doing a good job.
I was my previous guest, Andrew Dixon. We did the podcast on there on Monday, and he was saying it's amazing how many racing drivers and rally drivers we have in the Borders. It seems to be must be in the water or something that makes you want to race around the place. Because obviously your good self and Jim Clark, and we've got Louise Aitken Walker, Andrew Cowan, and Jim Thorburn, and I mean there's countless people from the Borders that have come up to do well in motor racing. It must be the roads or something.
Even rallying there was Gary Pearson, he recently came third, North, and Michael Binney, rallying. So I think in the old days the roads in the Borders were quiet. There was long straights. But as you say, Andy Cowan and Louise set the pace as well for everybody following Jim, But Jim was just a natural and just did it because he enjoyed it. But compared to today, he would be in a saloon car, he'd maybe be in a sports car, and then do the Grand Prix or whatever,
wasn't it?
And it made themselves very, open to everyone to go and see. But today, they come out of their motorhome onto the grid and then back, and that's it basically. You never see them.
It's a different way of life now, isn't it? It's also professional, and that was the thing. And of course, there was the thing that Jim Clark had to go to France, wasn't it? Because he was a tax exile at one point because the taxes went up in the 70s or 60s over here. And,
that was right,
and rightly so. Because I mean, when he's doing the thing he's doing, he needs to make sure that he keeps what he earns rather than seeing it disappear off.
But the money in these days, it's nothing like what it was today. Because in Jim's car, on his overalls, I've got some of them, the only things that on these overalls are Esso and Dunlop, and basically and maybe a Lotus, and then there was no advertising really at that stage, so therefore the money wasn't as big as I like what it is today, but and that's why it was very much, it wasn't amateur, professional obviously, but it was just it was
before that boom of like cigarette sponsors and everything else like you had on the Lotus with the Chapmans on it when they brought in them. Was it that famous? I'm trying to think of the cigarette brand. Was it the Marlboro, wasn't it? Yeah. And that, of course, that changed because the whole car looked like a cigarette packet.
McLaren had Marlboro.
Yeah, that's right. And Lotus had, was it? Oh, I'm trying to remember what it was.
Players,
that's right.
John Players special.
Yeah, John. Yeah, that's the one. Right, I'll turn that.
So
you can hear a lot. But so no, that made it all very, very different.
It did.
But I mean, certainly from your experience as well at Goodwood, it's a great way to see all the cars. And for our listeners at home, they might be wondering, how do you get to see all these cars. But I suppose things like Goodwood is a great way. The Festival of Speed or the Revival event is always good to go and see.
Well, the Duke of Richmond and Gordon, as I think I said earlier, is a patron of ours. We were the favourite charity this year at Goodwood. And but a few years ago, when they had a tribute to Jim Clark in 1965, when to mark the year of his second World Championship and winning Indianapolis, they had about 40 of Jim's cars there. And we all drove one of them. Sterling Moss, John Surtees, any drivers who get hold of basically. All drove a car with Jim's for 5 celebration laps. And we were lucky to get the database of all these owners. And we followed it up. And quite a few of them said, if you want a car for your new museum when it's built, we're happy to loan. And it's good that these cars that these owners have are actually used for historic racing, because they're much better to be used than just sitting doing nothing.
Because they're just
But there are times in the year when they're not going to be used, and they said if you're not using them, you can have them in the... And as you're probably aware, in the past up in Duns, we've had various cars of Jim's up, and Jackie Stewart and Al McNish, people driving them up Newtown Street.
They were fantastic events.
And, doing that sort of thing. And so the idea is that, the new museum, which we're hoping will open next year at some point, and now it works well underway now, instead of just having trophies, when once you've been once, you don't need to see them again, you can just see all there is to see. After this, there will be cars in there that Jim's raced. And as we hopefully proceed in the future, we'll like to think there'll be a phase 2 where we'll have another maybe 6 cars in there. And then not only Jim's cars, but we'd like to think we could have other Scottish motorsport cars as well. And also to show the old and the new, what the current Formula 1 cars are like compared to Jim's days, because they're youngsters. But we hope to have an era in there where we'll have mechanics that can do repairs to a classic car with a professional mechanic in there. The idea will be to get students who are maybe at Borders College learning to be motor mechanics and things, who maybe want to go into the motorsport side of it there, and there'll be an activity area for youngsters, and a lot more to see indeed.
You mentioned potentially simulators, because that's the big thing now, isn't it? That's where it's all esports are where it's going. I've got one here. I've got my seat, my racing, my steering wheel. That's the nearest thing I've got to having a racing car. That's what I've got, and it's amazing how that side is growing. And I suppose people can practice, to some degree, get them an idea of what happens, and then eventually they can get into a proper racing car after that. It's going to be great. In fact, Andrew Dixon had suggested that perhaps when they open the new museum next year, it could coincide with they're hoping to get the Jim Clark Rally back.
Hopefully,
and if they could do the same thing at the same time, that would be an amazing thing, wouldn't it? To have the whole thing back in Duns.
Yes, we're very limited to when we can do it, depending on dates, because the Grand Prix tend to be nearly every weekend.
Yes,
there is a summer holiday period when hopefully we maybe can get.
Yes, in August usually, isn't it? Yeah.
But that'll be the time. But going back to the museum when it does open, our Jim Clark Trust is the motto really is heritage, inspiration, and education, and that is the heritage from Jim's legacy, inspiration to inspire young people to come forward and educate the younger people to
the
learn
next
more.
generation, isn't it?
And excuse me, and we hope that we'll have funds available to help promote that.
I think it's going to be brilliant, and just the fact that from seeing the construction now and getting up when they get on with that and getting it all completed, I think it's going to be. Well, they reckon they'll have at least 20,000 visitors a year, compared to around about 5,000 at the moment, and I think that's just maybe even a starting point.
Time will tell, and it'll just depend, how it all goes. But we like to think we get a lot more. We will get a lot more. But it's a long time, since that Jim was killed, and that museum has been opened every year. Since it first opened. And so Jackie Stewart has come and done a couple of refurbs. Moved it around a wee bit. But this will be the major.
The big one, isn't it? Well, I remember the time when Ayrton Senna came down to the room, and of course it was in the Berkshire News a few days later. But because he was a big fan of Jim Clark as well, and I was going to ask, had you ever met Ayrton Senna in any of your motor racing meetings?
Never met him. Unfortunately, I met his nephew at
Bruno Senna.
Really recently, we were over in Paris for the induction to the Hall of Fame of Formula 1 drivers, and I was there to represent Jim. And there was 9 other current Formula 1 world champions there, plus family members like Bruno Senna and other people. Even Mario Andretti came across from America, and Jacques Villeneuve was there, and we had a great time. And so I met Bruno, but all the drivers are there, the current ones, and we spent 2 days together, and I'd like to watch them all together, see how they act.
Yes,
and they were great. They got on very well together.
I suppose it's such an incredible sport, and an amazing thing for me, just as a Formula One fan, just to experience it is great. And even for touring cars, for all types of motor racing, it's just a fantastic thing to watch. And you always dream about having a go. One of my good friends who also does. Comes on the show quite often. He got his motor racing license at Silverstone about 10 years ago, and I went to watch him do all of that. And once he had completed all the kind of the kind of classroom side, they then went out in the cars and they did practice laps and all of that. And he got 2 races at the short circuit at Silverstone. They call it the Stowe circuit, I think it is. And he finished third. He was third in one. And I think he was and then he came from 11th to 6th in the second race. But it was really good because it was a chance for him to have a go. And it was a Formula Ford that they drove down there. But it was great fun watching it all and seeing how it all works. And then people from all over the world had come to do the same training. In fact, at the same time, that was the thing. He did and there were 2 groups doing the racing license. They're running simultaneously. And the other chap drives for it was Jan Magnussen and his son. Now, what's his... I'm trying to remember... Magnussen, who is now in Formula One, he was in the group, but he was in the other group from Jonathan. But we watched him, and he was getting told off the whole time for doing dodgy manoeuvres. So, but they were very good. They had like Scalextrics at the back, and they were incredibly. Their reactions on Scalextrics were so quick they could just wipe the floor with us. But it was amazing to see how it all happened and how it all worked. And it's just a fantastic sport, I think, to be around. I don't know what your view is on current Formula One, but I suppose we can finish with that. And do you still kind of keep up with it?
Oh yes, we'll watch it. Don't really go to the races now, but if we're abroad, I like to go to the circuits and see the circuits, and quite a few of them. But the racing you see far more on the telly now.
Yes, it's fantastic coverage.
But a lot of people do say once you've seen the first couple of laps, and maybe the strategy, with pit stops and when it changed, that's interesting. But and there's quite a lot goes on behind the scenes that some people don't realise, technology, but. How these cars have been sort of manipulated from the pits or from the factory back at home, But it can be a bit of a,
I think you can get good races and bad races, isn't it? It kind of really varies. And certainly, I do have a lot of respect for the current drivers because I do think they are very, very good. But it's every era just seems to bring in all this new technology and new things that come about. But I'm just not so sure if they all go to electric engines. I just think that will. The engines are already an awful lot quieter than they were when they had the V8s. But we once went to, in fact, 3 or 4 times we went to the testing at Jerez in Spain, and it was great fun because you could get in for like €10 and see the whole thing and see the whole circuit and see the cars going for it. And in fact, we saw it in 2008, and that was the second season that Hamilton was there in his McLaren. And we took a video of him coming down the back straight, and it looked amazing, and the noise was just fantastic, and I took my wife to it the last time we went in 2011, and I said to her, "Oh, don't worry, it's not very loud," and she could hear the noise from about 2 miles away from Jerez, and I said, "Oh, it's just a bee flying past the car or something, it's just something like that." And as soon as we got into the car park, you could just hear the noise, and but she actually quite enjoyed it, and because it's an amazing kind of atmosphere, and just the whole everything about it is something special.
I know it's sad we haven't got these noisy cars as they were, but Formula E now is we look at the environment and the way things are changing, the way they're going. It's coming in with the electricity, and everything else
that kind of thing.
It's technology moving forward. We're seeing the demise of the diesel cars now back to petrol again,
Yes, I know. I wonder how long that will last though, because people are getting a shock going back to petrol and not getting the miles per gallon that they were getting. So I kind of wonder whether it's maybe been a little bit quick to ban everything when it's. In fact, one of my friends was saying yesterday he was cycling going up Edinburgh, and of course he got the fumes from the buses, and I said, but that's from the buses and the taxis. It's not necessarily from the cars. The cars are a lot more efficient. than the buses and things like that. So we'll see how it all works out. But I think the governments are all desperate to try and ban anything they can
that's
until they realise that they need it.
There'll be no cars in the future, will there?
Yeah, but it's one of these things. But I actually entered a competition last year for the Renault Infiniti, for the Formula One team, because they were offering a chance to drive a Formula One car, a V8 version from 2013 for one lucky entrant, and it was great fun. I mean, we won a factory tour to the Renault F1 factory down south, and just near Cambridge it was. So it was great that we saw the Austrian Grand Prix. They had this mini theatre, and then they wined and dined us the whole time. So me and Yvonne and I went, and we had a lovely time seeing what Formula One is like nowadays. And obviously the money involved is incredible, hundreds of millions of pounds, and obviously it's all an experience, isn't it? That's the kind of difference. But yeah, well, look, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you on the show, Douglas. Thank you very, very much for coming in today.
Oh, it's my pleasure, and thank you for having me.
Yeah, so it's I want one last quick story for our listeners. And I remember my father telling me the story many years back. He was driving. He had a Ford Cortina, just a very normal one, and he was driving up to Edinburgh one night, going past Carframill, heading up the road, and he thought he was driving quite quickly, and all of a sudden this flash went past him, and he realised it was Jim Clark heading on his way up to Edinburgh, and he realised then that was a different way of driving, to what he was able to do.
Yeah.
But I think everyone's had fond memories and things like that have come from.
I can remember Jim driving, on the roads. And one night we were going to a farmers meeting at Kelso, and I wasn't driving, I was with my father. And this car shot past, a bit like your father. And I said, "Who was that?" And it was Jim Clark. And this is a really winter, snowy night.
Goodness
and
me.
he was just, but that's what happens.
That's what they do.
That's what they do. And then there wasn't the same issues about speeding and things as there are today.
Aye. No, that's the thing. I think some of the funniest stories you hear about are racing drivers on their drive home. Doing amazing mileage in a couple of hours. Almost as much as they would do in a Grand Prix. It's the kind of speeds that they can do in the cars that they would be given. So that was the thing. But well, it's been fantastic to have you on the show, Douglas, and we just wish you all the best, especially for the Jim Clark Trust and for all the work that you're doing with that, and for really, yes, all of your businesses and sporting connections. It's been fantastic to talk to you, and thanks very much.
Well, thank you, Hugh, and I can just say thank you to everybody who supported the Trust over the last 6 years to raise the 1.65 million that we did.
Yeah.
And we're now on phase 2 to raise another $1 million so they can get more cars in eventually if all goes to plan. And look forward to the opening sometime in 2019.
That would be fantastic. Well, we look forward to that, and we will keep you updated with exactly what's happening with the Jim Clark Trust and, of course, the new museum that's opening here in Duns in the Scottish borders. But thank you very much for listening. You've been listening to the Cardio Advisor podcast show with me, Hugh Hatrick, and my very special guest, Douglas Niven. We'll speak to you soon, and bye just now. For more information, go to cardioadvisor.co.uk, and you can see all the special offers that we have on the website. And remember, we have our YouTube channel, which is at Hugh Hatrick, and also we have our podcasts on Podbean, on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Anchor FM. And if you like what you hear, please like and subscribe to our shows, or you can donate every month for just £1. Thanks for listening, and we'll speak to you soon. Bye-bye. At cardioadvisor.co.uk, we can help you save thousands of pounds on your next new car or van. And we can also source second-hand cars as well. And we can save you money on car rental, whether it be in the UK and abroad. Just click our rental link on the website. And we'll give you a free gift if you trade in your car with We Buy Any Car using our special website link. So go to the website now and see how much you can save. And it's back to the show. Thanks for listening.